Prince Harry walked out of court believing the legal fight was over. But in reality, one of the most significant chapters was only just beginning. What happened after the judgment, not during the trial, has now become the focus of a fresh dispute over legal costs worth millions of pounds. On July 7, 2026, the High Court handed down a lengthy judgment dismissing all 97 claims brought by Prince Harry and 6 other claimants against Associated Newspapers Limited. The decision followed an extensive trial lasting several weeks, during which the court heard evidence from numerous witnesses and examined decades of published articles. For most people, that judgment marked the end of the case. Instead, it became the beginning of another legal battle, this time over who should pay the enormous legal bill. Only hours after the ruling, Prince Harry and fellow claimant Baroness Doreen Lawrence released a joint public statement criticizing the outcome. They described the judgment as a complete and obvious whitewash and said they had sought justice and accountability but believed they had received neither. Prince Harry also questioned aspects of the judge's reasoning, arguing that parts of the decision were difficult to reconcile with what he believed had been presented during the trial. His remarks quickly attracted worldwide media attention and became one of the biggest talking points following the judgment. At the time, many observers viewed the statement as an emotional response to a disappointing legal defeat. Few expected those same words to become part of the next stage of the litigation. Several weeks later, during proceedings dealing with legal costs, Associated Newspapers referred directly to the July 7 statement in court filings. According to reports of the filing, the publisher argued that instead of accepting the court's decision, the claimants had continued to publicly suggest that the judgment amounted to a complete and obvious whitewash. The company argued that this conduct justified an order requiring costs to be assessed on the indemnity basis rather than the standard basis. That distinction may sound technical, but it could have a major financial impact. In English civil litigation, the unsuccessful party will often be ordered to pay a significant proportion of the successful party's legal costs. However, there are different methods for assessing those costs. Under the standard basis, the court carefully considers whether the legal costs claimed are reasonable and proportionate. Costs that are considered excessive or unnecessary may be reduced during the assessment process. Indemnity costs are different. They are generally awarded only in exceptional circumstances when the court concludes that a party's conduct justifies a more favorable costs order for the successful side. Although the court still reviews the claimed costs, the assessment is generally more favorable to the receiving party than under the standard basis. Associated Newspapers argued that the claimant's post-judgment conduct, including the public statement criticizing the ruling, supported such an order. Whether the court ultimately accepts that argument is a matter for the court to decide. The financial figures involved are substantial. According to the reported court filings, Associated Newspapers sought an interim payment of approximately £9.95 million while the overall costs are assessed. The publishers claimed legal costs reportedly exceed £34 million, reflecting years of litigation, extensive disclosure, numerous witnesses, and a lengthy high court trial. The 7 claimants are also reported to have litigation insurance with a combined limit significantly below the total costs claimed. Exactly how any eventual liability would be allocated among the claimants remains subject to the legal process and any final court orders. For Prince Harry, the costs proceedings have therefore become almost as significant as the original trial itself. The central question is no longer whether the newspaper obtained information unlawfully. That issue was decided in the July judgment. Instead, the dispute has shifted to how the legal costs should be assessed and whether the claimant's conduct after the judgment should influence that decision. Legal costs disputes often receive far less public attention than headline trials, yet they can carry enormous financial consequences. In this case, millions of pounds may ultimately depend on how the court views events that occurred after the judgment had already been delivered. That is why the July 7 statement continues to receive such close scrutiny. For Associated Newspapers, it forms part of the argument that the claimant's conduct warrants indemnity costs. For Prince Harry and the other claimants, the issue will be whether the court agrees that those public comments justify a departure from the ordinary approach to assessing legal costs. As the costs proceedings continue, the outcome could determine not only how much is ultimately payable but also how future litigants approach public statements made immediately after high-profile court defeats. One thing is clear: while the original trial may have concluded with the July judgment, the legal battle over its financial consequences is still unfolding. The next ruling will not revisit the evidence heard during those weeks in court. Instead, it will focus on one of the most expensive questions in modern civil litigation: who pays, how much they pay, and under what legal standard those costs should be assessed. Sometimes, the biggest consequences of a courtroom defeat do not arrive with the judgment itself. They emerge afterward, during the fight over costs, where every public statement, every legal filing, and every strategic decision can become part of the next chapter in the case. What makes this stage of the case especially significant is that it highlights how litigation doesn't always end when a judge delivers a verdict. In many complex civil cases, the battle over legal costs can become almost as fiercely contested as the trial itself. Lawyers on both sides often argue over not only the amount that should be paid but also the legal basis on which those costs should be assessed. That is exactly where this dispute now stands. Associated Newspapers maintains that the claimant's conduct after the judgment should influence the court's approach to costs, while the claimants are expected to oppose that position through the legal process. Ultimately, it will be for the court to determine whether the circumstances justify a departure from the standard approach. For Prince Harry, this means the spotlight has shifted from the evidence presented during the original trial to the legal consequences that followed it. Every filing, every argument, and every procedural step is now being closely watched because the financial implications could be substantial. Whatever the eventual outcome, the costs proceedings have become a reminder that major legal cases often continue long after the headlines about the verdict begin to fade, with the final financial consequences determined only after the court resolves the remaining issues.